disappeared again.
There you go.
There.
Okay, so everyone can see.
Yep.
So here we go. This is the object creation functions, inheritance, properties, methods, and instantiation. And, well, let me do it that way. So this is really a lot of this is pretty conceptual. So if you can understand these concepts, you're going to do great. Okay, objects are containers for variables. Okay, they're a way for us to store stuff, manipulate things, and send data over the network. So think of objects as a collection of key value pairs. Okay, so in this, I have two examples down here. I've got two, they're the same thing, but they're just defined differently. Okay, so I call one the longhand way and the other one the shorthand way, right? So let person's going to be your object. Let it be a new object. And then they're defining, like, you know, person's first name is John, person's last name is Smith, and person's eye color is brown. Okay, this is just a shorthand version. It skips saying this, and then it just says let person, and then by this curly, I'm guessing by the curly brackets, it knows that this is an object. You're defining an object. And you do the same thing. You have these colon things to indicate this is your key, and then you have to put these in parentheses. Now, I have put these in single parentheses, or no, are these parentheses? Yeah, the parentheses, right? I put them in single and I put them in double, and they both work. If you had a number, you would put it in that, right? So that's basically it. Your key is first name, or your key is last name, your key is eye color, your value, these are your values, and person is the name of your object, okay? So let's move on to the next one. Object properties, okay, this is really easy. The properties of person is first name, last name, and eye color. Okay, they're basically they define the characteristics of the object. Okay, so they're attached to the object. The properties are attached to the object, so they exist within that object. Okay, so that's pretty simple. Okay, methods can be attached to an object as well. So objects are a property inside an object that stores a function. And I really learned the difference between function and method. A function that's stored within an object is called a method. Otherwise, it's just like a function, okay? Like if it's a standalone function in your JavaScript or whatever, you just call it on click, whatever. But so a method is one that stores a function inside of an object, okay? Which is a very fine differentiation there. The functions inside can be used to manipulate the object. So here we've got an object, person, first name, last name, job, age, okay? Sue Brown, teacher, 46. So this is a function here. You just say function, and what this is going to do is it's going to return, the function's name is display, by the way, and it's going to return this refers to the object you're currently working with. So we're currently working with person, so it's this dot first name, which would be Sue, and then a space, then her last name Brown, and then a space, works at a space, works as a teacher at age 46. Okay, so that's what this is going to do. It's just going to, these are all concatenated together. It's going to print that out. So then update age function will return the person's age plus 1. Okay, it's going to increment the object person dot age plus 1. Okay, and I could have done it, you can do it other ways, you can write it out, but I didn't do it that way. And then, so this is my document element ID. I had, on my HTML page, I had a thing called person and a ID called age change. And basically, what this, it printed out in, or put out on that page was person object dash, and then it put the person display, or it ran the display function right here. So that whole thing I just told you, which was Sue Brown works as a teacher at age 46, would actually be right here. It would go into this part of, or the ID on the HTML page, if you can understand that. And the same situation would be here. Basically, this is next year, we're getting the person.first name, which is Susan, will be, and then we're gonna update the age, run that function. And so it's gonna take this right here, the person's age, add 1 to it, so it would say 47 with a period. So that's that. Sorry that was so boring and probably killing you guys. All right, so now that we know that you have objects and you can instantiate them. Okay, so there's hard-coded objects like I just showed you. These are hard-coded objects where you literally put the first name in there, and so this person, this object person, can only be John Smith unless you change it, but you're basically only having one person. So this is a bad idea because it would take a lot of code to get more people, and it's a bad idea. Except for in the case where you only need one. Like for instance, if you had a game and you had only one world, where you only have one world in which they exist in. So maybe hard coding the world is fine, and that would be just fine. But most often, if you're talking about people, you're going to have more than one person, and so you're going to not want to hard code that. So you want to use a constructor function object. Okay, so with a constructor function, it's now possible to instantiate or create many new objects more efficiently instead of hard coding them in there. Okay, so constructor names should be capitalized to distinguish from regular functions. Okay, so see, in this case, this was lowercase, but this is a constructor function. We want to have an upper P here. Okay, whatever you name it. And below the constructor function, you see the instantiation. Okay, so let's look at the constructor portion first, okay? Here we go. You name it, whatever you're going to name it, and then you say function, and then you have all the params, all the parameters that you're going to take in to fill this baby. Okay, so the first name, you know, this is going to go here, whatever it takes in, and then last name, job, and then notice this age. I set this immediately to 20. I just said, hey, if they don't bother to put in an age, I'm just going to default that to 20, okay? So that's what will happen. And then I have a function. I have two functions, the same two functions that we saw before. That's going to basically print out everything and update their age. So, oops, dang it. So to instantiate, this is the instantiation portion right here, All you got to do is say, you name it, whatever you're going to name it. You could say P1, you could say people1, whatever you want to name it. And then you say new people. So this is a constructor function, you're calling it, and you're saying Sue Smith, teacher 42. Well, Sue is good enough to give us all the pieces. We got all the pieces for Sue. So instead of being 20, she's going to be 42. Now, let people 2 is John Jones. He's a pilot, he didn't say. So he's going to be 20 because he defaulted out, okay? This is just how I used it. It's going to put it on my page, and it's just going to say people object 1 and people object 2, and it's just going to use this display function and print those out. I didn't update their age, obviously, in this case, okay? So next. Okay, so there's another way even beyond that. Okay, you got hard coding, you can instantiate. Now there's another way to create an object beyond that, and that is called Object.create. And what Object.create does is it's a prototype essentially. And objects that are created using the prototype will inherit the properties and methods of that prototype. Okay, so I should say that again, they're going to inherit the stuff from the prototype. Okay, so let me show you that. Okay, so here's my prototype. So I've got a car, and it's got a name, make, miles, price, drive function, return, test a drive car. Okay, so yeah, that's a drive function and display function. So it's got a couple functions and it's got that. So you basically create your constructor. I guess you're supposed to capitalize it again. I would have to verify that to be sure, but I would think you would have to. And then you can create, how you create it is you just basically say Object.create car into the thing that you want to call it as. So I have a subclass of car called Econo, like an Econo car or whatever. And I've only defined the name, make, and miles. So I didn't define the price though, which is bad. Well, it's not bad. It just illustrates the point. Okay. So because, notice I didn't put price, I'm just going to read this. I didn't put price on account card. If you don't assign a value of one of the properties, it's going to inherit from the prototype, okay? And so this car, this Civic Honda, is going to be $30,000. Now we know a Civic Honda doesn't cost $30,000, but it's going to inherit that, right? And it's also going to inherit these methods as well. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. And then this brings me to the topic of inheritance. You want to use a prototype when you want to have inheritance like that. So inheritance is possible through prototyping, which means when you create objects with a prototype, that object will have inheritance of its parent's object in a chain-like connection until it goes up to the top, which is the object itself. Object is at the very top, and object has null at the very top, but it ends there, the buck stops there. So every object inherits properties from its prototype, kind of like its parent object. So what do the chains of inheritance get us? The lower children inherit all the properties of the prototype chain above it, and JavaScript will look through the entire chain until it finds out what it's going to need. So let's just go back for 1 second. Say I had a car, and then I had subcategories like maintenance, and maybe something else. But then I could have Econo cars and the maintenance. It could be a subcategory of maintenance as well as car. So I mean, it could be changed as much as you wanted it to be, however you wanted to structure that. So let's see. Oh, evidently I'm at the end of the slideshow. So I just want to show you how the inheritance works on my page. I've showed you everything else. This is like very conceptual. If you can understand that, here's my page. You're welcome. It's already posted on Git, so you can totally look at that. But here's Object.create, this Object.create portion. And this is literally, I took the example straight out of there. But what I wanted you to see was this displays what is in this prototype right here. I just had it, I called the display, and it displayed it. Okay, so once the car prototype is created, then you can create a subcategory like I did here on Econo, and you basically assign the values to it. Let's see. And then what this does is it's displaying, you see that the Civic is being, let's see, return this name. So this name would be Civic, and then buy is the word here, and then the make is Honda, you see here, and is $30,000. But you see here, we don't have any $30,000 here. So this is proving that it is stealing from up here. It's not stealing, it's inheriting this $30,000 price from up here, as well as, I just want to point out here that this function that I called econo display doesn't even exist. Econo display is not a function, you see. It's not even in here. But it knew that it needed that a display function, the display function is coming from car. I hope you get that. I hope you understand that, because Econo doesn't have it, but he does, and JavaScript will literally go up the chain of parents in order to find what it needs. So that, my friend, is the inheritance portion of that. And I hope. Does anyone have any questions?
So it sounds like the subclasses that we studied in Java, like the subclasses that inherits the property
Yes.
from the,
yes.
yeah. So it makes sense to me. I mean, it's echoing, that language there. Anyway, yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's
It makes sense. Yes, for me, it's clear.
Yeah, it's like a lot of these concepts are very similar to Java, really. I mean, like, it's easy to understand once you get it the first time. It's just a matter of the syntax, a matter of how do I work it. And then I actually think this is pretty easy. So anything else?
So can you only do inheritance by using the create method?
I think so. I think you have to use Object.create in order to and create a prototype to do that. I hope I'm not telling you anything wrong, but it's another way to create those objects. So you have to create a prototype at first, or obtain some sort of prototype. Maybe there is a prototype out there. Like, for instance, if you go down here on my page, like Object.prototype is that there's object prototype, there's array prototype, there's function prototype. So within there are functions and things that you could access. This is actually, I don't know what's happening here. This is actually how it's working. Like, this is how this thing all glues together, essentially, is because you can call a function from someplace else and it will find it because of this prototyping nature. So I believe this is how it's all like, the whole language is like assembled. That probably made no sense. Anyways, I'm going to stop this, and then you can ask me more.